So, what is the actual cost of an affair? We tend to talk about it in terms of right and wrong, money, or a broken heart. But today, we're going to dig into the price tag you don't normally see. We're going to unpack a real life conversation that took a pretty shocking turn. Okay, picture this. You're out to lunch. Across the table is this older guy. Charming, successful, and very, very married. He's just spent the last hour telling you how his wife just doesn't get him anymore. And then he leans in and asks you that question. What do you even say to that? Well, for a woman named Rachel, the answer was immediate. No hesitation. She said yes. And that one little word, it was about to set off an absolute firestorm with her best friends. Which brings us to our first section, a Tuesday conversation. It all started with one unbelievable confession. So the scene is a 90s themed bar. Four friends, Serenity, Cycraria, Leah, and Rachel, are all together for their last Girl Talk Tuesday. Little did they know, this final get-together was about to go way off the rails. Rachel is just buzzing with excitement as she tells her friends what happened. This guy, he paid her tab, he bought her dessert, and after a whole lot of complaining about his wife, he made his move. And the deal wasn't just for, her company. It came with what she called sugar daddy benefits. And that leads us straight into section 2, the side piece debate. As you can probably guess, Rachel's big news did not land well. What happened next was this raw, no-holds-barred argument that really put their entire friendship on the line. So on one side, you have Rachel. She's defending herself, right? To her, this is just a transaction. It's a smart move financially. She even tries to argue that she's basically providing a service. But her friends? Oh, they are horrified. They see it as dangerous, just plain wrong, and a total sellout of her self-worth. And this is how Rachel just shuts the whole conversation down. She pulls out a wad of cash, $1,500, starts fanning herself with it, and tells her friends they're just jealous. As far as she's concerned, argument over. It's a total mess, isn't it? Is Rachel being a smart operator, or is she making a huge mistake? Are her friends just being judgmental, or are they looking out for her? But what if they're both missing the biggest piece of the puzzle here? What if the real risk has nothing to do with their argument? That brings us to section 3, the unseen consequences. We're going to step away from the drama about morals and money for a second. Let's look at the risks that never even came up in that conversation, the cold, hard data about what really happens when there's infidelity. And this is absolutely crucial. Study after study shows a direct link between infidelity, or even just the suspicion of infidelity, and something called intimate partner violence, or IPV. We're not just talking about hurt feelings here. This can be a trigger for actual physical danger. And the stakes? They could not be higher. According to the CDC, almost half of all women who are homicide victims in the U.S. are killed by an intimate partner. And while cheating isn't listed as the official cause of death, it's very often the motive that comes up in these heartbreaking cases. It just goes to show how explosive these situations can get. So you might be wondering, why isn't infidelity just listed as a cause of death? Well, a lot of this violence happens behind closed doors, so it's underreported. It's also really hard to prove it was the one and only cause. And official records, they focus on the immediate act, like assault, not the complex reasons behind it. But researchers know the connection is there. And of course, the damage isn't always physical. For the person who was cheated on, the psychological fallout is just massive. We're talking severe anxiety, depression, a sense of trust that's just completely shattered. That's another part of this unseen cost. And that brings us to section 4, a silent epidemic. Because beyond the risk of violence, there's a whole other danger that nobody at that bar was talking about: incurable health risks, specifically STIs. Let's start with HIV. The CDC says that right now about 1.2 million people in the U.S. are living with the virus. And while it's much more manageable today, it's still incurable. Now, here's the really scary part. Roughly 1 in 8 people who have HIV have no idea. They haven't been diagnosed. And that is how a virus like this can spread so quietly through a network of partners who are completely in the dark about the risk they're facing. Okay, next up, genital herpes. And the numbers here are just staggering. About 1 out of every 6 people in the U.S. between the ages of 14 and 49 is living with this incurable virus. It is incredibly common. But this might be the most shocking fact of all. A massive 87% of the people who have genital herpes don't know it. They're undiagnosed. They either have no symptoms at all, or the symptoms are so mild they just don't recognize them. The huge majority of people carrying it are unaware. So let's just put this all together. You've got millions of people carrying incurable infections, and most of them have no clue. In fact, on any given day, about 1 in 5 people in the United States has an STI of some kind. The odds are not great. All right, this all brings us to our final section, the real bottom line. Let's take all this data and go back to that conversation at the bar, and let's recalculate the actual risk of being a side piece. That whole argument they were having about money and morals and jealousy, they were completely missing the point. Those things are all subjective, right? But the numbers we just looked at, that's not subjective, that's reality. And that right there is the real bottom line of this entire explainer. That $1,500 Rachel was so proud of, it looks pretty small when you weigh it against the very real risk of intimate partner violence and the silent epidemic of incurable diseases carried by millions of people who don't even know they're infected. So the final question isn't really for Rachel anymore. It's for you. Now that you know the data behind the drama, how does that change your perspective on what the true price of infidelity really is?